What's up YouTube, we're back with the first deck showcase of this new big variety balance patch, and we start right away with dragons, which might arguably be the strongest deck of this new expansion and could definitely become the meta definer on the ranked ladder and maybe also on tournaments. The balance team at Riot has been trying to make dragons viable for quite a while now, just receiving some buffs here and there throughout the balance patches, always adding new cards, but this time they might have really tipped the scales a bit, and this dragon deck here received a total of 4 buffs, and they were all pretty relevant. So first of all, we have Herald of Dragons now having 2 HP instead of 1, which is very relevant to this deck. As a 1/1 it wasn't really playable just because it was too fragile. Dying to any ping makes this card not worth including. Now that it is much more sturdy, it smoothens out the development curve of dragons. They used to sometimes struggle in the early turns because you could only play the relevant dragons in Shyvana and Screeching Dragon from turn 4 onwards, and having that curve of 1 drop into Herald of Dragons, into Shyvana on turn 3, Screeching Dragon on turn 4 is usually backbreaking in almost any matchup. The next buff, which might also be the most relevant one, was the addition to Dragon's Clutch second option, not only granting dragons +1/+1, but also a permanent overwhelm tag, which is absolutely enormous. This was one of the biggest weaknesses of dragons. They struggled against chump blockers. And now, if your opponent tries to chump block you, you just give everything overwhelm and all of a sudden threaten 15-20 overwhelm damage in this very same turn. The third buff was Dragonguard becoming a very mana efficient and sturdy unit. He got his attack buffed from 2 to 3, and now as a 3 mana 3/4 is generally it's already like a very mana efficient body, very good for stabilizing in the mid game, but the passive is really what sets this card apart. All of your relevant units have Fury, and making them grow quicker in both attack and defense is relevant. You don't only want these mid-game dragons like Shyvana and Screeching Dragon to stick on the board, but you also want them to have high attacks, right? Because remember, we can now give them overwhelm, and that means we often don't even need our top end of Eclipse Dragon or Aurelion Sol to close out the game. Often just Shyvana and Screeching Dragons are already going to be enough. And the fourth and final buff is Aurelion Sol's level up condition being reverted. For those of you who are rather new to the game, back when Targon got released, Aurelion Sol already had this exact same card text. You would level when allies have a total of 20 power, but it turned out to be way too strong. The meta was much slower back then, Targon was way too efficient, and it got nerfed to 25 eventually. Now that the games don't drag on that long anymore, the developers decided to revert this, level up at 20, and that is something you can very consistently do with this deck. Keep in mind, one of your most common late game developments is going to be Eclipse Dragon on turn 7 for Daybreak, so that the next dragon you play costs 2 less. And then on turn 8 you already drop Aurelion Sol, which means on turn 8 you'll already have a total of 17 power on the board. And it's not that hard to have one more unit on the board to immediately threaten the Aurelion Sol level up. And the level up is devastating, right? You already generate a big celestial card by playing Aurelion Sol, generate another random one, especially if you get something like Living Legends. The game is usually over on the very next turn. So this deck is pretty similar to what it used to look like while it was popular, and that was in the Azir Thresh Nasus meta. I'll just go over the list very roughly. We have our whole dragon package, which is the core of this deck. Dragon Chow into Herald of Dragons on turn 2, ideally into Shyvana on turn 3, into Screeching Dragon on turn 4. Doesn't really matter often if you play those on 4 or 5. If we don't get that exact curve, we of course have Dragonguard Lieutenant, a great 2-drop for board control. It can immediately contest your opponent's Dragon Chow, your opponent's Crackshot Corsair, or some other 1-attack units and value trade immediately. If we don't get the Shyvana on turn 3 already, Dragonguard right now is very good at stabilizing and making sure that your dragons grow even bigger when they trade in this mid game. Solari Sunforger, you need some sort of sustain to not get overrun by burn decks. Otherwise, the meta would just be full of burn decks. I like to play triple Sunforger. If you play him, most of the time it's best to play him on your attack turn, because then you can swing with him first, guarantee lifesteal, and ideally you'll also have 2 or 3 mana bank for a single combat or a strafing strike, so you can make sure that you get the lifesteal effect twice. That is usually gonna already beat most burn decks. Then, I mean, Shyvana and Screeching Dragon are self-explanatory, and I already explained Eclipse Dragon into Ashe Sol. Besides that, we play some of the very efficient Demacia cards. Single Combat and Concerted Strike are insane in this deck, because your units are usually just gonna be bigger than your opponents, and your units benefit from striking to remove your opponent's units because of the Fury keyword, especially if you have a Ruined Dragonguard on the board. Now, I usually go for this split, 3 single combat, 1 strafing strike, 2 concerted, just because your units are already bigger. Usually single combat is already an up trade for you. That means you remove your opponent's unit while yours survive, and it's much more mana efficient than concerted. In the current meta, I would actually consider a 3rd concerted strike though, because you'll play a lot of dragon mirrors. And Sharpsight is a super duper ultra efficient combat trick. And the last spell I haven't really touched on is Dragon's Clutch, but it's one of the key cards, one of the best cards in this deck, because it just perfectly fills whatever you currently need. If you didn't find your big dragons, your late game cards, of course you go for draw 2 different dragons. It will very often find you your top end Eclipse Dragon or Ashe Sol. If you currently already have a board lead and try to find ways of finishing the game, you go for Overwhelm. Keep in mind that giving your dragons Overwhelm is also super synergistic with this cheap removal in single combat or strafing strike, because you just do this, your opponent declares their blocker, and then you single combat out the blockers in front of the Overwhelms to hit for full damage. So I'll talk about flex spots here real quick. So for tech options, I like to play one Solari Sunhawk. It's very good in the mirrors. It pops the Aurelion Sol spell shade of your opponent. It can stop a Shyvana or Screeching Dragon from popping off. This could also be something like a Blue Sentinel though. This could be a Radiant Guardian if you run into a lot of burn. This could definitely be a 3rd concerted strike, maybe a Hush in some metas. It really depends, you're kind of flexible there, but the only other consideration is Ruined Dragonguard still needs to be tested a bit, whether or not this is actually better than a card like Laurent Protégé or Solari Priestess maybe, who also received a buff in this patch. But as of right now, I am somewhat convinced by the Dragonguard. It does feel pretty good and pretty strong in this deck. Some people also like to play the 4-drop or 5-drop dragons. White Flame Protector is one of them, and the other one, here we have a Fuse Firebrand. That all just helps to smoothen out the curve if you find Herald of the Dragons earlier on, to have more options of going Dragon on turn 3, Dragon on turn 4. Apart from that, I think I've already explained most of this deck, how it's supposed to be played. Just classic mid-range, you go for board control, you try to have bigger units than your opponent in just about any matchup, and finish with either outvaluing them with Eclipse Dragon Ashe Sol or just explosively in the mid-game with Dragon's Clutch Overwhelm. One thing I noticed to having played this deck in the past, as of right now, this deck is a lot more Shyvana and Screeching Dragon centric, because they have gotten so much support in the form of Ruined Dragonguard and Dragon's Clutch. You used to very often have to find your Ashe Sol to be able to close out games, but as of right now, you can just get surprise lethals basically out of nowhere once you have a bit of a board lead in the mid game. And to illustrate this, I have a bunch of good gameplay examples. This should be one of your best choices if you want to climb the ladder. Might need to take a tiny bit of time to learn the deck, but overall it's not that hard to play. It's very intuitive. So have fun, enjoy, and good luck on the climb.
Is it the mustache? Who knows?
That might have been playing Aloofs though. I'm not sure if you still want Aloofs. You can check it out there. There's also just I think it's also my Mobilytics. This is a horrible matchup. Yeah, it's bad, but it's not as bad as it used to be. Like, back in the days, Ashe Noxus was just the complete bane of Demacia. And now it's bad, but not unwinnable. So I'm not playing Dragon Chow yet, because my opponent might play Glory Seeker on turn 2. I'm not sure if that sacrifice of the Glory Seeker was really worth it.
Sharpen the blades, secure the kill.
Hot on the trail.
Why are dragons OP? Because of they got buffed to Oblivion, mainly because of Dragon's Clutch.
Remember me.
That's a Shyvana level. And both of the dragons are out of Reckoning range.
Witness my true power.
I still can't believe, like...
Many tribes under one banner.
I'm not sure if the game designers actually thought this would be a slight buff, like they worded it. Like, some light buffs for dragons, like... Just adding this to a card, like granting all of your dragons overwhelm at burst speed, additionally to a card that was already good, is just like... cracked. I mean, it's asking for dragons to be tier 1 or at least tier 1.5. Scorched Earth in this deck. Okay. And the thing is, Overwhelm was the only, like, that was the only weakness that dragons had. That's the only thing they needed, right? The only real weakness of dragons was chump blockers. And now you can just punch through them and literally OTK through them, especially if you pair that with strike effects to remove a blocker very cost efficiently.
I hate having to put my face on. My move.
Nice. It's a sharp side block. Is it? I could just let this go through, draw Eclipse into A-Sol actually. Might be better. Sharp side, hope to draw Shyvana. Decent odds. I kind of like this. I just want to punish this attack.
Hold my work.
I'm not sure if this is the better play, but it just kind of looks too cool to not take it. So if my opponent Icevale archers now, they're likely to not have Brittle Steel. Okay. Now I would say they are likely to have Brittle Steel.
Arm yourselves with holy sunlight. Knocked and ready.
Interesting. Playing this before the archer? I don't really see how that makes sense.
Time to make an appearance.
Alright, I think we got this. A-Sol into giving both of these overwhelm. It's gonna be fun.
What a treat.
Focus on me. Behold my work.
Should probably block here because I'm going for overwhelm next round, most likely. Gives a better troll chant, but if the last card is troll chant, we're also just winning.
I whisper truth into lies.
Okay, so if my opponent greets the block now, we're definitely getting overwhelm lethal.
Your
Elusive plus overwhelm, let's go.
Look out for reavers.
This is just so overtuned. I mean, with the power creep that has happened in the recent expansion, maybe dragons need it to stay competitive. But this is just nasty strong.
Now they'll pay attention.
Surprised to see me.
Abject failure.
Shroud the world in wings.
Each journey is a discovery.
One must stack the wood before burning the pyre.
Check W. My opponent can copy this as well. I let him swing first and then concert it. Oh, never mind. We got the perfect timing.
Nonsense. The constellations bow to me.
And it's been a while since I had Ari equipped as a hello RGG emote. It's like... it can easily be interpreted as heavy BM, which I find hilarious. GG's. I don't think dragons have ever been tier 1 before. They were tier 1 at one seasonal, the one that Thomas won. It was the meta of a Zero Relia, Thresh Nasus, and dragons. Alright, let's see the supposed counter. Herald of the Dragons, where art thou?
A little further. Bingo.
We can always rely on you to keep us safe.
Kinda punished for mulliganing the Dragonguard away. I think we just want this on the board. Is Thresh Nasus good against Dragon? No, Dragons used to be a Thresh Nasus counter. Right now it would be not horrible, but Dragons can just play 1 or 2 Hushes and that devastates Nasus. Free stacks? Yeah, Ezreal Puff Caps should be good. Ezreal Foundry, basically. You're gonna wish you had that stun later? Yes. But I still had to play something, right? Pass into end rounds would have been kind of bad there. Sunforger just better here? I kinda like saving him for next round. To pair him with Strafing Strike. Ooh, also an interesting draw. Oh, full swing's a mistake. Main deck Bloodbait? Bruh. Ooh. Potential change of plans. So opponent plays Snapjaw. How big is Snapjaw? 4, maybe grows to 5. Should be good. If Snapjaw gets played, then I strafing strike something in the backline. Just grow Shyvana. Oh, I can't count. This is originally... Yeah. Okay.
This is your end. Nowhere to
I think we're chilling.
Now I take to the sky.
Reality is just your mind crumbling under what it doesn't understand, silly!
I don't want to meet whatever won't do it.
So there's a good chance our opponent does not have a weird Pyke yet. A death from below Pyke. This was a Rek'sai. This predict didn't do anything. Then Rek'sai got played for the attack. No predict here. Then Bloodbait. One predict here but no attack. Like I said, we're kind of chilling. One of Jarvan instead of Zoe? You can do it. I feel like in most cases Zoe is going to be better for this deck though. He just gave us Letha on the open attack. Unless he holds a Pyke, of course. I mean, we go for it, right? GG! Herald deck did not high roll? I don't know. There was a couple of Rek'sais in the early game and the perfect curve. But arguably some misplays by our opponent, especially that last attack. Gems playing Pink City. What the hell? Did you not know that there's a new patch around? My opponent will have the token on 2, so I don't need Challenger that desperately. Told you Ionia dragons are OP. My opponent didn't play dragons though.
Trickster never loses because Zoe makes the loses! Let's get cruised!
Dragons still suck. Dragons I would say dragons are ridiculously strong. The issue is they will always be polarized by nature.
We were forged in dragon fire.
So that even if they are meta definers, they are very counterable.
Prepare for battle. Ready weapons.
Missed. Hello, new best friend.
Gold card would be decent for him.
Try to keep up.
Guard the walls.
Might be setting up a red card instead.
I found a home among the Dragonguard.
We are your people, Anna. You ours.
Okay. Probably just low on development.
I've whipped up something special.
Or not.
Her light is our sword.
I'm not getting a better opportunity to play this guy, I think. Especially with single combat mana up.
Prepare for battle.
Wanna see what it does?
Casting duo battle? Yeah, that's actually true. Could ping their own units.
Dragon waiting.
I don't think I care about this double up. Like I could single combat this into one of the back row units. But then the keg remains. I'm not sure if I want to use single combat here though. Runs Gangplank level, he's at 2 out of 5, he's not really a threat.
Oh, I've never met anyone like you.
They will burn like we did.
I mean, we're chilling though, opponent down to 1 card in hand. Kinda like just eating this, holding Gangplank answer, which feels like kind of only way we lose right now. I mean, the earliest Gangplank is a problem is turn 8 though, right? And even then we can either sharp side block or maybe crescent strike, or we'll have like a big enough blocker. So I'm not really worrying too much about it.
Come face me. I smell fear.
And we still have 3 strike effects plus 2 concerted strikes.
Never lost a fair game. Played one. Soak it in.
I'm not sure if I'm playing Eclipse. Yeah, I prefer going wide. This is probably Screeching Dragon and whatever Star Chart finds for units. Serpent's quite fine as well, but I like drawing and having more odds of finding, yeah, Sunforger or Concerted Strike.
Sing with the darkness in your heart.
Or Single Combat Strafing. Eclipse would have been Letha. Yeah, I suppose. You might actually be right. Depends a bit on what our opponent draws, but it might have been Letha. Yeah, might have missed that a bit, especially with the sharp side. We Eclipse Shyvana, then this hits for 8 and Overwhelm. Yeah, I probably missed that. GG.